This is a production of Only Hope Publications and is a work of the Churches of Christ. Hello and welcome. We're glad that you've tuned into this interview with Don Garey. He's from Ames, Oklahoma, and we look forward to discussing with him his previous belief system, as he once considered himself churchless. Hey Don, you doing okay today?
Hey, I'm doing great.
That's good, man. That's good. It's good to sit down and talk with you. So thankful for these technological means which we can do so. I'm interested, and I think maybe our viewers are interested, if you can define for us a little bit what it means as the name we kind of gave it, being churchless. What is that belief system, and how did you reach that state of belief?
Well, churchless, pretty much, it has to do with the idea of people having reached the conclusion that there is a God, but they don't understand enough or know enough about God to identify with any one church. Now, I come from a family, my father has, on my father's side I have Baptist relatives, but he himself, I never went to church with him, so he didn't attend. And then my mother, as a child, she went to a Methodist church, and I had never been to church with her before either. So, while they have a church background, they believe that they had their own relationship with God. And so, anyways, this is the household I grew up in, and so I didn't have a lot to go with, other than having a book in my hand and some relatives who knew a lot more about the Bible. But as far as reaching this churchless state, I'd never had any interest in religion at all until I had some neighbors. I was about 10 years old, and I attended a First Baptist church with them. This is the first church I ever attended. And, I liked the experience, and I can remember, walking down the road singing church songs. 10 years old, just songs that I liked or whatever. And I didn't really understand why my family didn't attend church. And they just never showed interest. I remember one excuse in particular was that my father was a truck driver, and so he was only home for 1 weekend a month. And so we didn't go to church because of one of the 2 days that we had with him, which, it didn't make any sense for the other weekends. But anyway, so I had gone to a First Baptist church when I was 10, and then when I was 12, I went to a Southern Baptist church, different church, same town, just curiosity, I guess. I met some kids in school that had gone to that Southern Baptist church, and I wasn't content. It was okay. I went there. I can remember going through the Bible classes and everything, but it just didn't make sense to me how they could be content where they are in the Methodist church, the Catholic church, the Lutheran church, those churches in town. Everybody was just okay with everybody else doing their own thing. I kept having questions about, what do they do different? Why aren't we all in one building? And so that didn't last long. I went there for maybe 6 months and then quit, lost interest. And then we moved. When I was 15 years old, we moved to a town where I had some more family living in town, some aunts and uncles, and they went to a Calvary Baptist church. And so I started attending over there on Sundays and Wednesdays, and just took an interest in their program. And I fell right back into that same brick wall as to why are we here and not with them. Nobody can answer my questions as to why aren't we fellowshipping with the Methodists? Why aren't we doing things with them? What are we doing differently? Nobody paid attention enough to my questions to even try to answer them. But and then a year later, I gave up on that, and I went to a Methodist church because I was interested in a girl, 16 years old, Um, It'd be 11th grade. And I went every Wednesday for 6 or 7 months, and even participated in the events that they had as far as fundraising. Didn't get to go on the trip because I wasn't there when they started fundraising. But and I just felt like it was a lost cause. I'm doing this, but there's no more interest other than the girl. It's just pointless. And so, once again, I fall back on that idea that all these people are doing all these different things, but nobody really knows what they're doing. How can I trust any one person who, when they can't tell me why they're doing something different than the next person?
It sounds like what really drove you to that state was just religious confusion that you were seeing before you in your family.
Yeah.
It sounds like churchless defined is really just almost saying, well, these organized religions are in contradiction to one another. It does not make sense as to how they can be in contradiction with one another, but yet still serving a God who is perfect and all true. So I'm going to choose to just believe in God rather than pursue any one of these religions who all think that all of them are acceptable, even though they all contradict each other. Is that kind of?
That's exactly right. Basically I played up my own ignorance. I just thought that, if all these other people could study the same book and come to different conclusions, then how can I learn anything from the book? How can I expect to read it and be right if all these other people can't make sense of it themselves? And so it's, I viewed organized religion as kind of a lost cause. The Bible itself, I never really spent any more time in it because I looked at it as though I knew I would just get confused like all these other people. And so I just kind of abandoned it. But
how far reaching do you think this is, Don? I mean, how common is it? And if it is common, and if it is far reaching, why do you think this is the case? Do you think many people find themselves in your situation where grandma, grandpa from this side go here, grandma, grandpa from that side go here, mom and dad do different things at different times, have different beliefs? I mean, is that the main reason here? What do you think is the cause, and is it indeed common?
Yeah, I believe that this is actually very common because even amongst my friends who, some of them were atheists, some of them called themselves agnostics, which I myself was borderline agnostic because I didn't know. I had just decided that there was, and not having any proof one way or the other, but or any conviction. But I had friends who their family would, on Sunday mornings they wouldn't go to church, but they'd watch a televangelist or something, and so that was their church for the day. And basically, spending as little time as possible on a spiritual subject, just enough to satisfy that guilt that you get from believing in a God and not spending any time with any interest in it. But I certainly believe that it's very, very, very common and very prominent because people just won't make time for God. And I think that's very prevalent today.
It's kind of convenient, if you will. I mean, because obviously, because of the confusion that was there, it was going to take some work, which, indeed you ended up investing, which we'll talk about in a moment. But, I mean, you can't just, to find the truth, you can't just lay back and take the convenient route, which it sounds like. Do what?
Right. That was my way of life, was just sitting back and taking the convenient route because, I didn't do anything other than what I had to do. I didn't go out that was just part of my character also, because I didn't do anything as far as school or extracurricular activities. I just did what was expected of me and did my own thing.
Right.
And that's pretty much the way my family works. So.
And so it sounds like this trickled down, this belief maybe that you had and approach to God and to the truth, trickled down to the other areas of your life. As you said, it was just kind of your character and just in other attributes. But, I mean, you and I went to school together, and, brother, you work hard, man. So my question is then, is the culture driving those who practice in and hold to the belief system of churchless, or is it the other way around? Do you think the churchless belief system is driving more so the culture? What do you think comes first?
I'd certainly say that the culture would come first, because, you know, we're independent people. We want to do our own things, and in any, you know, business or economy class, that's something we study in particular, is how other cultures are very group oriented, but America's always been, and I'm sure will continue to be. Everyone wants to be self-made. I mean, that's the American dream, is to build yourself up, to make yourself the top dog, and as we see it here, is to, you don't want to have to make time for God. You're spending your time focusing on yourself. We have a very self-oriented society.
So, Don, how do we, you and I and the church, how do we approach these folks who, you know, are very individualized, if you will, and are focused on the American spirit, the American way, and very prideful in a sense? I mean, there's going to take a certain level of humility that they have not had to experience in any other aspect in their life. It's not prevalent in culture at all, right, unlike other cultures, like you said. So how can we maybe approach them in a way that would cause them maybe to consider giving up that mindset? I mean, what do you suggest?
Well, ignorance was bliss for me, as far as that mindset. I was afraid to know more, because everyone else couldn't make sense, so how could I? But my question that I had to ask myself, and that I encourage other people to ask themselves, who find themselves believing in God and yet they're churchless, how can you please a God whom you're not doing what He asks you? Even if you do believe in God, if you're not going to take the time to study or do what He says, how can you expect to be pleasing? So that should definitely instill fear, which is kind of the point that brought me out.
It sounds like you're almost saying play to the person's pride and to the individual nature, and kind of challenge. Okay, you are prideful and you're very individualistic. So here's a question. Answer it, and maybe let that seed in the Word of God as you present to them Scripture. What's your response to this? And it sounds like that's what you did.
Right. I had a lot of doubt and a lot of questions as to where I would go, or where anyone goes when they die. Right. Of course, you know, heaven and hell's prominent, so that came with the belief in God, was belief in heaven and the belief in hell. And so then you ask yourself, well, how can I be saved? Well, you just go with the general idea, because this is something that everybody believes, is that you have to believe in God. And so instead of getting your facts from the book, you're just taking the most general, most accepted things, and that'll make it all right, instead of going to the source and making sure. But so it's illogical.
So what then changed you? Because that's how you were thinking. Obviously the Word of God, but I'm wondering the influences in your life that encourage you to obey the gospel. And how long have you been a Christian, Don?
I've been a Christian for 6 years. It is my second year of college. I met Katie, and we worked on a project together. And here's how they got to study with me. What had happened was that we worked on this American history project together, as a debate over abortion, actually. And I didn't know one way or the other, and so I chose the pro-choice side. She took pro-life, and we had to get together to organize a PowerPoint to do this debate. And so she suggested that we got together at the annex to their church building, which their fellowship hall, and her dad's office was there, and he ended up getting a study with me. And so even after class, the classes were over, I had an interest in Katie, so I was a fish on the line anyway, and so I kept attending the studies, and I reached this decision that light bulb moment is to when this came across. This was the point. This was the light bulb. Is that so? You don't want me to join your church. You don't want me to join this particular church. You want me to join that church that's mentioned in the Bible. And so, I wasn't just bolstering a number for a congregation. I was being added to the church mentioned in the book.
It sounds like you had people that cared about you. Obviously, Katie, and those who don't know and are watching this, Katie is now your wife, and you all have a beautiful family and beautiful little girl. And obviously, Katie's dad took an interest in you. So people took an interest in you and in your soul. And as you were saying before, the religious organizations made no sense. They were all contradictory, and they were all, like you said, just wanting to add a number to themselves. But you saw in the book, hey, there wasn't the Methodist Church, the Catholic Church, the Lutheran Church, the Baptist Church. Like you were mentioning before, as you were seeing, this doesn't make any sense. There's the Lord's Church. It's funny, I studied with a lady yesterday, and I said, on the day of Pentecost in Acts 2, when folks were coming up out of the water after being baptized, if we went up to them and asked them, and this didn't originate with me, this idea, comes from Brother Clark, actually, in Memphis. He said, if you went up and asked them, hey, what denomination did you just become a part of? They would look at you like you're crazy, because that's the very beginning of the church. And this lady even said to me, they would say, I came a part of the Lord's church. And I said, that's right. And it sounds like that was the light bulb moment for you. It's like, this is the church. This isn't some other just group. And that's just excellent. I'm so glad that took place, that you guys got to work on that debate together, and obviously you became a Christian and my brother. I'm wondering, we've kind of talked about this a little bit, but what can we do to get what you realized into the minds and hearts of others? I mean, obviously, preaching the Word of God, you've already mentioned asking questions that really cause them to think. And just, do you have any words that maybe, you've already said maybe a question that you would ask. Is there anything else that maybe you can think of in regards to our approach as brethren to folks that find themselves in this churchless state?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about our individualistic society. Well, we're also becoming an all-accepting society. And so one thing that I found particularly is kind of offensive, and every time I use the term, I find that it's taken with that grain of salt, is that word non-denominational. When somebody asks me, well, what denomination are you a part of? And so in explaining, a couple of times I've done this. I've said that, well, non-denominational. The Church of Christ is not. And so my suggestion and my realization that I've come to is that our society takes that we're naming ourselves after what the others are doing, and we shouldn't do that. We're setting ourselves apart by setting them apart. And what we need to do is set ourselves apart. And so instead of being non-denominational, setting ourselves apart from them, we need to focus more on being the New Testament church. Instead of categorizing ourselves apart from them, we need to categorize ourselves, set ourselves apart instead of setting them apart from us.
I think that's absolutely excellent. I a long time ago stopped using the term non-denominational, not for the same reasons you just mentioned, but you really have caused me to now think some, because like you said, we're not defining ourselves based upon what we're not compared to others. We need to be defining ourselves based upon what we are as we see in the book. And so that's excellent. I started using the term pre-denominational to just kind of get people to think like, look, we're going back before the denominations. But I like even what you've suggested even further. Let's just drop denominations altogether from, in certain cases and just make it plain. Look, denominations have nothing to do with us. We are the New Testament church. Yeah. And I appreciate what you've suggested, because I run into folks who are churchless a lot. Like you kind of mentioned, truck drivers, guys that maybe want to hear a lot about God, are in the truck, and they're not really concerned about finding somewhere to worship and gather with the brethren. They're not concerned with finding folks to provoke unto love and unto good works. They're just wanting a relationship with God without the church. And obviously, that can't happen because Christ built His church. Matthew 16:18. Christ takes it personal when His church is offended, as we see in Acts chapter 9. And so, obviously, the church is a part of Christ. So we cannot have Christ without the church. And so, kind of going on that, I'm wondering, now that you are a member of the church, what are the differences that you see? What are the benefits and the life-changing blessings that you've now experienced being in the church and having the fellowship and the joy of being around like-minded brethren and children of God, as compared to that one-time state where you were churchless? Let's talk about that a little bit.
Right. Well, identifying with a church in particular, as apart from being churchless, I found the very first thing was comfort, because my main interest in religion had to do with death, the fear of the unknown. And so that comfort that you get from the book, I got from the church. And my immediate family in particular has always separated itself from the rest of the family. And so I myself in particular have always been a go my own way individual. Grew up and always practiced sort of being a loner type. And I found that in the church, I found that comfort of having a support group didn't have before. And also, you make that comparison as to how no matter how much support you can get from your family, they can't support you in the ways that the church can. And that's in this spiritual encouraging way. In that encouragement to grow, think about how church works. As you are certainly capable of growing as a Christian on your own, but when Christians come together and study, and say a more studied individual, the teacher teaching the class, of course, knows a little more about the subject already, and you learn something after that manner, you certainly grow together a lot more than you grow by yourself.
It makes me think, kind of just to go off what you said, I'm thinking of a football team. A quarterback can practice throwing balls through a hanging tire. He can practice studying his plays. He can practice, running the plays in his backyard. But he is not going to grow like he really needs to until he gets out there with the rest of the team and plays with them. So that, every member participating then really helps him develop into what he is trying to be. Which, as you said, if we're trying to be Christians, then we need to be focused on not only God, but God's family, and be working together with His body. So that's just excellent. Do you have any other things you'd like to say, or any other advice, or just any other words at all? I'll
just say this, that out of being churchless, It certainly was, as you said, that religious confusion that put me in that state. I was not content to be led about by someone else who didn't know what they were talking about. And so when I finally found someone who was practicing what the book said, rather than just this is the way we've always done it. We do this because he said to do it. This other person said to do it. We can take comfort in knowing the book, but being churchless, ignorance takes a foothold. It's that fear of the unknown. Well, if I don't open the book, I don't have to worry about it. And you try to get by on that. And if you're you can't be content with that. You never will be.
I appreciate all that you've said, and it sounds like really what you ended on in regards to words maybe to those who are churchless is to continue to search. Don't just settle. Don't just settle for ignorance, like you said. They know deep down that they're not opening this up because they know when they open this up, they're gonna have questions. But you're saying don't be afraid of those questions. Jesus tells us, "Seek and you shall find." Matthew chapter 7, verse 7 and following. Knock and it shall be opened unto you. He tells us that if any man desires to know the will of God, he will know the doctrine. John 7 and verse 17. So if somebody really is not going to settle on being content in ignorance, they're going to find the truth. And it sounds like that's what you did. I really appreciate you joining us today. I'm so thankful that you were able to sit down with me. I know you're busy. And all of those who are watching, if you have any questions about this interview or about any of our interviews that we try to publish and promote on Only Hope Publications, please contact us. Contact us by visiting our website through any one of our social networking outlets, and we would be happy to further assist you in any questions that you might have and study the Bible with you and point you to, as Don has been saying time and time again, the book and what God has to say. Again, Don, we thank you so much, and we thank all of you for tuning in and watching this interview.